Hello there, welcome to Bryan Lomax Movie Talk and my ranking of the Psycho movies. Yes, quite possibly my favourite horror franchise of all time. Maybe, I don't know, I'm not too sure. Alien is pretty much up there as well. But yeah, I do love these Psycho movies. Reviewed them all recently. Please do check out those reviews if you want to know my in-depth thoughts on each of these films. I won't be going into them in great detail here because, as I say, I've just reviewed them all. But I did want to put them in order of preference just to kind of, finish off this series, so to speak. After you've checked out this video, please do head on over to Cody Leach's channel as well, where he will also be doing a ranking video. He's reviewed all these films also on his channel, and he will be wrapping up with a ranking just like me. So go and check that out once you've watched this one. So we've got 5 films altogether. It's 4 originals and then a remake. But yeah, let's see what order they come in. We'll start, as is customary, with my least favourite to my favourite. Now, I will say there's not a single film amongst these that I do not like. So, you know, the lowest score I gave for these was a 3 out of 5. So, I like all of these movies. And with that, let's start with number 5. Number 5, we've got Psycho 4, The Beginning. This is a made-for-TV movie. Unfortunately, that kind of does show in some elements of it. It feels a little bit more like theatre in some aspects, or like a play. We were confined to a few rooms at times, but it's still very good. It still looks nice. It's got some pretty nice visuals on it. Anthony Perkins comes back as Norman Bates. He's really great in the role. I like what Olivia Hussey does in the role of his mother. She's absolute fruit basket in this. And yeah, it's arguably unnecessary to show us how Norman became the man he was, but it's still intriguing, it's still interesting. I like the psychology behind it. I like the exploration of the dynamic between Norman and his mother and how it was corrosive. I liked it quite a lot, but it is probably the weakest of these movies, only by a thin margin, I would say. My bottom 2, it's kind of, pretty close between them. So my number 4 choice is Psycho 3. Again, it kind of has that that thing about most horror sequels in which a bit of repetition starts to creep in. Rather than doing something different, you kind of stick to a formula. There's not much of a formula in these, but it does have that sense of the familiar. Like they don't quite want to deviate too far from what worked before, and as a result, that does kind of, it makes it feel like a lesser film to what came before, but it's still pretty enjoyable. There's a main character in it, this female character who we kind of follow from the start of the film right through. She makes some weird choices, maybe isn't the best written character of the franchise, but other than that, there's still some really good stuff in here. A nice kind of villainous role from the actor that I cannot remember the name of right now, but there's some good stuff. Perkins is really great. He manages to have a little bit of humour with the role as well, but it's not in that way that kind of ruins a lot of horror films. It, Chapter 2, We're Looking at You. No, there's just some nice little injections of humour where it's needed. I suppose it's needed, but it's utilised in a way that isn't off-putting, and it doesn't overpower the rest of the film. I like Psycho 3. It was really good, very enjoyable sequel, and by the time you get to like the 3rd film in a horror franchise, you're lucky, quite frankly, if it's a 3-star film. So yeah, I gave this a 3.5, and that's good, clearly. Psycho 3 at number 4. At number 3, we've got Psycho, the remake, the Gus Van Sant film. Very surprised, shocked actually, that this is as high as it is. When I came back to these movies to do my review series, I was adamant this would be at the bottom. I didn't think for a second that it would, yeah, make much of a dent, to be honest, but there you go. It is the same film essentially as Hitchcock's movie, although in some areas it is improved just by the technology, the advancements in technology that are at Gus Van Sant's disposal. That opening shot, for example, is clearly better. I'm sorry, but it is on an objective level. Just reviewing that objectively, it's better. That's not a diss on Hitchcock, it's just simple fact that he didn't have the technology at his disposal that Van Sant did to pull off that shot. Some of the performances are better, the side characters, I think William H. Macy brings more to his role, I think Viggo Mortensen brings more to his role, I think that Anne Heche is arguably just as good as Janet Leigh, and I think Julianne Moore also arguably brings more to her role. Arguably, I won't state that as definitive opinion. But yeah, the weakest link is Vince Vaughn. Unfortunately, having not done that much dramatic work up to this point in his career, I feel like he was a little bit out of his depth, and that showed. I think he has a certain sense of unease at times that comes through, but it's still the same film. It's still Joseph Stefano's script. It's still a classic. It's still a great character piece, and yeah, for all those reasons, it's still a good film. You can argue it's probably pointless, but it's still a good film. At number 2, we've got Psycho 2, written by Fright Night and Child's Play director Tom Holland. He does an immense job on the script. It's quite frankly one of the best horror sequels ever made, because it builds on the original while still having its own identity and having something to say. You know, it's a film with this idea, this notion about how holding on to anger, holding on to bitterness will corrupt your soul, will destroy you. And yeah, it's a great message. It's a great film. It's really well directed. And it's really well acted across the board. It's very hard to fault it. And to be quite honest, out of all of the Psycho movies, this is probably the one that I will revisit most. It's probably the most rewatchable for me. Which kind of begs the question, why isn't it number 1? But yeah, it's Psycho, you know, it's a classic. Obviously, Psycho. Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho is my number 1. Again, just because of what it did, you know, this is in the 60s. This is 20 years before Psycho 2. This is like 17, 18 years before Halloween. It's 13 years or something before Texas Chainsaw. It's all these slasher movies these days that, you know, like the big 3 and all that. Psycho did it like at least 10 years before, 15 years before. So yeah, it's a benchmark in cinema. It is the granddaddy of all slasher movies as far as I'm concerned. I get that there's only 2 major kills in it, but even so, they are both knife kills, they're both slashers. Yeah. Psycho for me is the birth of the slasher movie, and it's still one of the best because it focuses on story and character, those 2 absolute pinnacles that cinema narrative is built on. It's just, yeah, that's what's kind of most important throughout most of these movies, all of these movies actually. That's what makes them so special to me, is that they always are focused on character, on story, on this character of Norman Bates and his psychology, and delving into that, seeing what makes him tick. It's what makes them really interesting movies to watch. Like I say, the second film for me, probably more rewatchable than the first. But just for how inspirational to the genre that the original Hitchcock film is still, I have to put it number 1. It's It's a 5-star film for me. It's absolutely incredible. It's a classic, understandably so, and it was well ahead of its time. So yeah, there you go. That is my ranking of the Psycho movies. But how would you rank them? Have you seen them all? If not, why not? Please do go and check them all out. It's, for me, given the impact that original Psycho had, I don't feel like this franchise gets the amount of love and attention that it should. It flipping should. When you got people who like absolutely sing the praises of film franchises like Friday the 13th and Halloween that have had more than their fair share of stinkers amongst them. And then you get Psycho, 5 films, all of which are good, at least good. Yeah, it's a franchise that deserves more love. If you haven't seen them all, go out and check them out. I couldn't recommend them highly enough. So yeah, that is my ranking. What is yours? Leave them down below. Let me know what you think of mine. Thanks for watching this video. Do check out Cody's. And until next time, cracking.